All right, this is Jason, and I am going to be doing a bit of commentary on a piece of motivational interviewing with, probably one of the greatest motivational interviewers of the 20th century, me, talking to Anna here. And as we go through it, I'll offer some commentary and some points along the way. I think you'll see from the very beginning some deficits in the way that I do motivational interviewing that hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. I should say right off the bat, this isn't the purpose of this is not to do therapy. We are ministry leaders, therapists, and other folks practicing motivational interviewing skills with each other, doing real plays. We're talking about real issues and actually trying to help the person with the issue that they're talking about. But we're not providing therapy. We haven't entered into a therapeutic relationship. And we're talking generally about things that friends would talk about with each other. We're just trying to use this as a vehicle to learn motivational interviewing skills. So let's check out this video and see all the places where I go wrong. All right, Anna, you have, previous to this, you have agreed to let us talk with you a little bit about some stressors that you might have. So let's start out just kind of big and let's just see what are some of the stressors that you're facing right now that we might be able to take a look at.
Let's see. Well, I'm a new mom, so that's a big one. And we are still settling into Canada during the pandemic. So, right now, one of my biggest stressors is kind of figuring out how to be a pastor's wife in that scenario. And like, we only had 15 people at church last week. So, like, try not to take that on, but feeling kind of like I do take that on sometimes. And one thing I just talked with Cynthia about was trying to figure out my next move and trying to find time for my own career as well. Feeling like I'm spending a lot of time supporting and like working for our family and working for the church, but not finding a lot of time to move forward with my own career. And just finished my master's the day that my baby was born, so haven't done
What?
anything with it since then. So
All right, so that was a lot of stuff, and you'll see what I choose to do after she's given me a number of things that are stressors in her life. Now the purpose of the exercise was to work on how do you focus a conversation. So I'm going to lean a little bit in that area, but watch what I do here.
very
Wow, that was a momentous day.
was.
Wow. All right. So yeah, very few stressors. There's just being a new mom, probably very, not stress inducing at all. And then you've got being a pastor's wife in the middle of the pandemic and being in a new country and what that's like. And then as well, you're looking at, do I start to move forward with my career or what would those steps look like? So, all right. So I would say that was a very matter of fact, content laden summary of what she said. So let me show you a graphic about motivational interviewing to explain why I think that was probably not the way to go. So these are kind of the four pillars of the spirit of MI, and that's really the most important thing, is to capture the spirit and to bring the spirit into the conversations that you have with people. So as I look at what I just did there, I think Anna would probably say I was collaborating with her, that I was listening to what her concerns were and reflecting those back to her, that I was certainly accepting of it. I wasn't judging her in any way. I was evoking from her, getting her to talk about what her issues were rather than me imposing kind of what I thought the conversation should be about. But where I think I really kind of got off track was this compassion piece. So, with my kind of matter of fact summary of what she said, I really missed an opportunity to show some accurate empathy. And now you don't want to go into consoling and sympathizing and poor you, and that's not what you want to do. But you do want to show the person that you can kind of see where they're at, or you can kind of guess what that's like, or you're in some way empathizing with how they feel. And I think I quite frankly did not do that well. So you can have your own opinions about that, and what you think would be the best option there. I think if you would like to, in the comments below, put what you would do after someone had just given you all of these things that are stressors for them. What could you have done or said in that moment to get a little bit closer to some accurate empathy? So let's see what happens. As you think about those, how do you decide what would be the one that would be most important to work on? Now, I don't necessarily think that's a bad question, but I just think it was too early in the process. As I said, I think I really wanted to empathize with her, let her know, hey, I see you, or I can kind of imagine what that's like, or is it a bit like this? Something that would have captured a bit more of her emotional state and what it's like to be her in this moment, rather than running forward with we're going to get to a goal, we're going to get to an action step at the end of this.
Well, I think the one that I have the most control over, or the one that's actually my business, is my own career. Like
Okay.
there's not much I can do about the church. I mean, I think if anything, I need to put some effort into backing out, backing away from, like, you know, kind of investing my emotional energy there because there's so much that's out of my control.
Okay. So you really want to prioritize what's within your control and you can maybe get some traction with, which in this case would be next steps for your career.
Yeah,
So that's a summary. I'm just saying, based on what you said, you want to prioritize X.
I think that, yeah, again, like just moving towards things that I have control over would probably be helpful for me.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
mhm.
And it functioned the way a summary should. It allowed her to continue to explain and kind of clarify what she means. A good thing to do here would have been another summary. Really, the goal that we're looking for, or a good kind of heuristic, is let's try and do two summaries for every one question. I did one summary, one reflection, and then you'll see I go immediately into a question. So that's kind of a reason in and of itself, is that it's something that you have control over. What are some other reasons that you're interested in looking at next steps with your career? So, not a bad question. It's going to get at this idea of what are some more reasons why she wants to quit. And that's a good idea to dig in and get to the motivation before you move on to the next steps. However, it is, again, it's a bit dry. I'm not providing the accurate empathy that I could have, and there's too many questions in a row.
I think it would be financially good for our family. I think it would be good for me, like in my day to day mental, like, flow to have some things going on that aren't just focused in our house. Yeah, I just think it'd be healthy to start doing something again.
Okay, so healthy mentally, healthy for the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
So on a again, short reflection, and I immediately go into a question. This was another opportunity where you could see that this was upsetting to her, and there, these things were stressful, and I could have acknowledged that. There's a number of things that I could have done. Again, in the comment section below, what would you have done in that situation to really go for that compassion and that accurate empathy, rather than doing what I'm doing, which is I'm going to ruthlessly go after what are the steps that we need to take. On a scale of 1 to 10, if 10 is like the most important a thing could be, and 1 is, I don't care at all, where would you put how important this is on that scale?
Yeah,
So not terrible. I'm asking her more about herself and more trying to kind of figure out how important this is to her. That's a bit of kind of accurate empathy, trying to figure out where she's at and how important this is. But again, I would be interested in your comments below to see how you guys would have handled that.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's probably like pretty high, like an 8 or something. But I think the way I'm acting about it is pretty much like a 1. Like I act like it's not just gonna happen when it happens, and I'm not been putting much real effort towards it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm, you know, when I get a little extra time, I'm definitely just putting it towards the like things that feel more immediate to me. Like, I mean, the stuff that has no long term effects on anything, like putting together IKEA furniture. So,
Okay. So on the one hand, in your there was some frustration there. Again, it would have been a good idea to say you're a little frustrated with this, something along those lines. And I think I was afraid that I was going to get more sustained talk. And it's appropriate at the end of a scaling question to follow up with the second half of the scaling question. What you'll see is that I'm in this kind of um, conundrum where she's given kind of some sustained talk about it's frustrating, I'm feeling kind of stuck. The number that she gives about how important it is to her is a pretty high number. So that would reflect kind of change talk. So let me show you another graphic here that I think kind of point out a good thing to do at this juncture. All right, so this graphic shows how you form a double sided reflection. And the way you want to do that is you want to start out with the things that were sustained talk. And the purpose of that is to kind of validate how the person is feeling. You want to end that reflection with the change talk that the person has given you. Because when you end the reflection on change talk, that stands out in someone's memory and they're more likely to continue down the road of change talk. And you want to connect those two statements with the word and. So let's see how I did that in this particular conversation. Behavior, you're seeing that it's kind of low, but you chose a number, and you chose a number that was higher, right? You chose an 8. So I'm winking there. I'm not winking at Anna. I'm just acknowledging the fact that I told someone else in one of these commentary videos not to connect those two statements with but, because when you connect it with but, you're kind of negating the sustained talk, which is not what you want to do. You want to validate it. And you have this other thing. So, on the one hand, this, and on the other hand, this. So, I'm kind of acknowledging to the other people that are watching this in the room when we're doing this that I recognize what I just did and I caught myself in it. And I had recently let someone else know about that as well. So, kind of ironic. And so, why did you pick the 8 instead of a 1 when I asked that question?
yeah, because I mean, like,
So again, the scaling question really does need to be followed up by the second question of why did you pick the 8 instead of the 1. But once again, I gave a reflection and I could have just zipped the lip and waited to see what she said about that reflection, but I asked the question right away again. So pretty consistent theme here.
I know that long term, um, for the financial good of our family and for my own, like, just to be able to be in a career that I love is really important to me. And long term, I know that that makes me really happy and fulfilled. And I want that to be a good example for my daughter. And, like I want that. Um, but I think it just feels overwhelming. I have taken a few necessary steps.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have a work permit here in Canada and
Okay.
I've registered as a social worker. So I'm registered as a social worker in Canada. So that was good.
Okay.
So I've taken some preliminary steps. It's just like every time I want to take a step, it seems to take a long time for me to get the to
Mm-hmm.
that step. And I
Yeah.
think the next steps are like networking and actually applying for jobs and that sort of thing. And childcare is a whole nother thing. So it's kind of chicken and egg, childcare and job. So that
Hmm.
was like a very big barrier as well.
Okay. So that's an excellent example of the concept of ambivalence. Because what you heard in there was I'm frustrated, I am um, kind of perplexed, I'm overwhelmed a little bit. So those are all kind of sustained talk. It's hard. I don't really trust my ability to change this. That's all sustained talk. That they're kind of reasons or um, ideas about why things are going to stay the same. And she also talked a lot about her values and why it was important for her to have a job. It was she wanted to model for her child having a career that she loved. Um, and she talked about taking some steps towards that. So it's kind of all mixed together. And that's typical of how people are when they're thinking about making change. They are a complex mixture of reasons to change and reasons not to change. And so our goal when we're doing motivational interviewing is to kind of help fan the flames of the reasons to change and just kind of turn the dial down a little bit on the reasons why things need to or have to stay the same. So let's see what I do with that. There was quite a bit there. What do I choose to do after that?
Mhm.
So you've taken some steps. You're a little frustrated with how long it takes you to take the steps. When you've taken the so exactly backwards. I should have said you're a little frustrated with how long it takes you to take the steps and you've taken some steps. And then shut up. It would have been great if I just shut up. And then maybe she would have gone on and talked about why she took those steps and so on. I give one reflection and then I'm right back at the questions. Steps. What's gotten you kind of up and moving to do that?
What was it? Well, like registering as a clinical social worker. I think um, what got me going on that was probably actually talking to another mom who's a stay-at-home mom, and she's yeah, I think it was helpful to talk to someone else who is kind of doing something similar because she's going back to work after like gosh, like 8 years at home or something, and
Mm-hmm.
that took a lot of courage for her, and I felt like I can do it if she's doing it, kind of thing. Um,
Okay.
she was applying to schools, and I was like, I'm just gonna look into it and see. I think that was probably it.
Okay. Let me just check our time because I want to make sure we don't. It's not a bad idea, folks. And sometimes it feels terrible to look at your watch, but it does help you kind of know for the person's good if they've only got a certain amount of time to talk. If you've only got a certain amount of time to talk, nothing wrong with checking your watch. You don't have to do it like I'm going to check and hope they don't notice. It's okay to just, hey, I'm going to check my watch and see where we're at, and then continue on with the conversation. But let's see what I do after I check the time. Run over. So I hear two things in there.
I hear
One, and you hear a baby. One is that talking with another person and having that social support and someone doing the same thing that did something for you. And then also you did this kind of mental comparison game of like, if she can do this after 8 years, I'm pretty sure I can do it after some maternity leave. So knowing either one of those two things, is there a way? Again, summary question, summary question. I could have just done one of those summaries. Hey, I hear two things. One is, you know, um, so the having talking about it with other people does something for you, and wait for her to respond. But instead, I march forward with yet another question. Or how could you apply those to the particular kind of lack of progress that you're experiencing right now? Good question, but they call this in motivational interviewing the question trap. When you just ask too many questions, and it can start to feel like an interrogation. It can feel like you're kind of running the show rather than you're doing a bit more following of them and seeing where they want to go. So Don't do as I do, do as I say. That this is a really bad example of summary question, summary question, summary question. It's almost like somebody's got a whole piano and I'm just hitting the same key over and over again.
Yeah, I think what that tells me is probably that networking and just talking to people who are actually doing social work in Canada and um, having more conversations first will probably make the rest of it easier. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
So what would that look like if you were to do that?
So I have a few
Again, not a bad question, but it's a lot of questions.
leads of people who work in mental health in Canada that I could probably reach out to. I have reached out to a couple and just not heard
Mm-hmm.
back. I just need to be more um I need to have a little bit more grit in how I'm reaching out to people
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
follow.
you're taking steps already, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm letting it slide when people don't get back to me and I need to keep going.
So that was an actual reflection. I kind of interrupted there. We could have taken away the right. I could have just said, "You're taking steps." But that was an actual reflection, and maybe even it could be considered an affirmation when we look at open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. So at least I didn't immediately follow it up with a question there. Okay. So what would it Or take to do do
Yeah.
that
I?
then? To not let it slide and to follow through when people don't get back to you.
Um, well, one thing I talked about with Cynthia was that, like, if I'm going to take time aside to do this, I need to enlist my husband's help because I need childcare to be able
Mm-hmm.
to have time to network, to yeah, to meet with people, but even to do the reaching out, like while I'm still awake enough to do it and that sort
Uh
of
huh.
thing. So yeah, what I was talking about with Cynthia was possibly just like, you know,
When she's saying talking about with Cynthia before this, I had people go into breakout groups and they did a separate exercise, and it sounds like it was kind of the same topic for her. So she's referring back to the conversation she just had about 10 minutes ago.
we already have our Google Calendar synced, but like literally putting time every week on the schedule where I'm going to spend time reaching out and spend time. I think that's the first piece that I got to with Cynthia, and I still think that that's probably a pretty good first step for me. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, but as far as like, I'm grateful for this second conversation because it clarified for me that I need that social support
Mm-hmm.
and that's just how I work. So making sure that I actually like don't use that time first to just look at jobs or to do something solo, but use that time to really connect with people so that I'm more motivated for those further steps that are less exciting to me, I think will be really important.
Yeah, the social piece will kind of pull you along. Be a great place to stop. That's a reflection. The social piece pulls you along. And have her say some more insights about why that social piece is so important to her. Let's see if I am able to just give the reflection, or if, like a broken robot, I'm going to come back with yet another question.
Yeah.
So I asked before about importance. I want to kind of ask about confidence right now. How
Mhm.
confident are you that you could go into the Google Calendar, put those times in there? They would actually be times that you could use, and then you would use those times to use the grit that you naturally have to reach out to people. How confident are you from 1 to 10? So that is a good question to ask at this point where she's come up with something that she wants to do. Then ask, how confident are you that you could do it? And from that you can look at, her ability to do it, what are some of the barriers and those kind of things. Not a bad question. Again, the ratio of questions to reflections and summaries here is really bad.
I think a 7.
A 7? Okay.
Because I think the only thing that's, I mean, I do agree that I don't have a problem reaching out to people, but I think for me, the issue being that um, my husband's schedule being unpredictable and our baby being unpredictable. So just the other
Mhm.
people that are involved, um, yeah, take it down from 10 for me.
Okay. So you're really confident in your own ability to do this. There's some, the baby and your husband. kind of bring the number down a little
Not like
bit.
in a bad way, but like
These other people, it's their problem.
well, a
Yeah.
little less predictable. No.
Husbands and babies getting
Well,
in my way.
like at this moment, right? The baby is crying, so.
That's kind of salient to you right now. All right. So what do you think? Again, I reversed the order. I should have said so the the babies and the husbands can be a barrier. At the same time, you're feeling very confident in your ability to be able to put it in the calendar and make those phone calls and reach out to people. Yeah, so I could have done the reflection differently. I could have avoided in interjecting my sense of humor there, and just really focused on her and and her reasons for wanting to make this change and her ability to make this change and what she wants to do. So if it's not questions, I guess it's humor that I'm going to interject. You'll actually do.
I think
So that's actually a good question. When you get to the point where someone has something that they're talking about doing and they've shown some ambivalence about it, asking what do you think you'll actually do is actually a really good question. You can get some good insight and traction from that, and people will often offer up some change talk during that, or they'll solidify their reasons for wanting to make the change. Let's see what Anna does.
think I think I'll try. Yeah, and if anything, I can always have maybe like a main time and a backup time. Like, so let's say it doesn't work out in this hour, but we can reschedule.
Okay.
And I can talk it through, and we can figure out
Okay.
what works for us. Yeah, I think I can do it.
All right. So you said you were at a 7 before. Still at a 7, or has it moved up or down at all?
It's a strong 7, Jason.
It's a strong 7. All right. So I didn't really do a whole lot of intervention. Maybe if I had done some more intervention there, maybe if I had asked her, what could what could we do, or what could you do that would move that 7 up to say an 8? What would need to change in order for that to move up to an 8? That would be a decent question. Um, Again, I'm very heavy with the questions here, but I did very little intervening there and then asked her if the number changed at all. So, of course, it didn't. So, that kind of solidified for her the fact that it's not as high as it could be. So, I kind of reinforced the fact that 7 is not an 8 or a 9. So, word to the wise, do some more work on the motivation before you ask them if the numbers changed, because otherwise, you're just going to solidify that they're at wherever they're at. Well, would you be okay with me checking up with you in like a week or two and just maybe send you an IM and just ask how it's going? So this is an intervention called failing well. So if you feel like maybe they're not 100% committed to this, we're not sure if they're going to make the change, are they at least willing to talk with me again about it? In this particular case, I had an action step in mind that I'll call or I'll instant message you and see how you're doing. It could have been more open than that. Would you be willing to talk about it again in the future? Anything like that. Those are all perfectly good ways to end a conversation where you didn't get 100% agreement that they're going to change. Go ahead and fail well. All right, well, we had a conversation about it. We learned some things. Are you willing to keep having that conversation? So this was similar to that failing well intervention.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And scene. All right. And from there, if you'd like to see, there's 3 or 4 other people, maybe 5 or so, that were also in this particular session of motivational interviewing. They give commentary on it. They talk about things that I did well and things that I could have done differently. If you want to check out that video, it will be below. But I would say in summary, as I look at this, the take home points are: number one, spend some more time listening and showing some accurate empathy. That I think that would have helped a lot. Secondly, I asked way too many questions. Should have used more reflections, which would, I think, also have affected that accurate empathy. I flipped the order a few times on the double sided reflection and put the sustained talk at the end. So I would avoid that. Um, and then I asked if the number had changed after I did very little that would have changed the number, and so it just sort of cemented the fact that she was at a 7, which is not a bad number at all. But anyway, those are kind of my take home points. Feel free to give your comments, ideas, and suggestions below. Thanks.